G'day, I'm Travers. I was 50 when I started painting and I was 60 when I started drawing. And if I'm honest, a big part of me was thinking, you've left it too late, Stephen. There isn't time now to become any good, but I'm so glad I didn't listen to that. If you're in the middle stages of life, let me give you some tips, some advice that I hope will both encourage you to really embrace the opportunity to start drawing, and also some thoughts from my own experience to point you in the right direction towards fast-tracking your drawing improvement. In a galaxy far, far away, I was once a high school teacher. And so one thing I did learn was how we learn. And a lot of these principles I'm going to employ in the tips I'm going to give you now. Let me start by clearing away a couple of negatives. Now, the reasons why we can reach middle age and we haven't started to draw yet, it may be as simple as we've been busy doing other things that were more important or more urgent. Or it might be as simple as we didn't think of doing it. We weren't inspired to try until now. But for many of us, you thought about it almost every day of your life, but there have been reasons that have stopped you. Often there are voices that we've heard in our head that have discouraged us from trying. Sometimes they're the echoes of things other people have said to us. Sometimes it's our own voice that we hear so negatively. But whichever way it goes, rather than trying to talk those voices down, the best way to respond is simply to say, look, I don't care. I'm going to try anyway. That way we can sidestep the whole issue and put our effort into actually doing something productive for our drawing. You haven't left it too late. There is time to start, and there is time to improve, and there is time to derive incredible satisfaction. But let me start by encouraging you and rattling off a few advantages that you actually have in starting to draw now in later middle-aged life. Things such as you probably actually have more time with less distractions to focus on whatever you want to do. You probably have more money to be able to afford whatever supplies you need for your drawing in the way you want to do it than you had when you were younger. If you've had a burning desire for decades, then don't underestimate the pent-up creative energy that you've been storing and that you really can put to good use. You've saved it, now you get to spend it. When we're older, we're often more realistic about ourselves and life and how things happen, how they're done, and that can be a tremendous advantage in making better choices and pacing ourselves in a realistic and effective way. And if we're older and we've been interested in drawing, in art our whole lives, we've had more time to see more things, to have been inspired, to have been exposed to creative possibilities. And all of this will fast track our learning experience once we actually start. So here are some more specific ways we can more effectively start and progress our drawing journey. My first advice is to not think of yourself as starting to produce artworks, but to think of yourself as starting to learn a skill. This does two things. It distracts our minds from thinking in a very unhelpful way. That is, that I'm working towards something that I've got some sort of concept about that comes from all sorts of places and probably is largely unrealistic and certainly very limited, but that will put tremendous pressure on me when I do sit down to draw and will be a distraction from the learning process. What I need to do instead is to think, well, I'm learning to draw. I'm learning a skill. So for some time, every time I put pen on paper, I'm not producing artworks. I'm doing drawing exercises, practicing, trying out, experimenting in order to learn how to draw so that I can produce artworks. Now, of course, I'm not saying that along the way we don't produce drawings that we're really happy with and really proud of. But can I encourage you with the fact that along the way of our journey, there'll be times where that happens. And then 6 months down the track, we will look at what we did earlier and think, wow, I thought that was so good. But I've now reached a place where, yes, I can see what I liked, but gee, I've come a long way since. We don't want to get caught up trying to agonize to squeeze out an artwork because that will stop me experimenting, taking risks, playing around, pushing myself. And all of these things are how we learn the scope of our craft and also how to engage the various elements when we draw. Now, being older, you may have done a very useful thing in your past that many younger people haven't done, and that's learnt the piano or learnt any musical instrument, and have had to go through the routine. At times it probably felt like a brutal routine of practicing whether you felt like it or not, because, well, the truth is most of the time you didn't. But this will be a great mindset and habit and awareness to bring to your drawing. Set yourself regular times to draw. And I don't just mean days or afternoons, but how long you will draw for. And then let that be the thing that determines that you will sit down and draw at that point. It will not come down to how I feel at the time. How I feel is not a good way to develop a skill. Consistency, regular and consistent practice is. And in the same way, learning a musical instrument pays off. With consistent practice, regardless of how I feel, sitting down to draw, because it's now time for me to sit down to draw in the schedule I've realistically created, will be the way I learn to draw. But if I can encourage you, in my experience, there has never been a time when I've forced myself to sit down and draw, usually because I need to make a video, when once I start, almost immediately I'm caught up in the joy of the process. And it's hard to even believe that I didn't want to sit down and do this. Next, don't try and do everything all at once. We may have a very wide interest in the drawing area. We may be excited at the thought of graphite, of charcoal, of ink, of washes, of watercolor, whatever. But I can't learn everything at once. And from a learning point of view, I learn a lot more quickly if I go deep in one area. Maybe it's drawing in ink, because I don't just learn how to draw in ink. I learn the skills of going deep in an area, of pushing out to the corners of all the possibilities of that one medium. Then when I might say, I'm going to explore pastels because they look a lot of fun and it'd be nice to have some drawing color, while there are a lot of pastel skills I'll need to learn, so much of what I've gone deep in terms of composition and value and line work and form, being able to visualize things, being able to see things in my reference, being able to go beyond the reference, so many things that I've gone deep with in my pen work means I can fast track where I start with the pastel. If I've learned how to go deep in one area thoroughly, I've now got the skill of going deep much more easily in whatever medium I pick up. But if I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because they're all so exciting, at the end of the time, all I've learned to do is to go very shallow in a lot of things, and that's not a good way to learn. Can I say too, there'll be far more motivation in the end by seeing how well and how quickly we improve when we limit the area in which we're trying to improve. Make a choice, stick with it. Of course you can change it, but don't do a lot of things all at the same time. This is one you probably won't hear elsewhere, but I think it's really important, and that's aim to complete your drawing in one session. It doesn't matter whether it's a half-hour drawing session or a 60-minute or a 2-hour drawing session, but aim to start and finish within that one session slot. Because when we draw, there are different rhythms and different ways of thinking and different ways of working and different ways of making marks and what we're trying to do at different stages in our drawing. In simple terms, the first half of a drawing, skills that we need and develop and use, are often fundamentally different to most of the second half of the drawing skills that we learn and develop. And there's a different rhythm, a different tempo in each of those sections. At the start, we're beginning, we go slower, we're having to do all the skills of establishing proportions and accuracy and working out the form and our techniques. In the second half of the drawing, we're putting them onto the paper, we're putting them into practice. We're also at some stage towards the end making the big picture decisions, particularly looking at values and at the detail we've done. Do we need to sharpen the detail anywhere to create a focal point? Do we need to change the values? We can't lighten them, but we can darken some of the areas and therefore create the effect of some areas being lighter. We can't learn, develop, practice the second half of the drawing skills, the pulling everything together to create the best possible end result, if we're always starting drawings, but then running out of time and not finishing them. Probably most of you watching this are not going to be doing a course, you're not going to a class. You're finding videos on YouTube, which is possibly how you found this video. Realize then that as well as being the student learning to draw, you've actually become your own teacher as well. So try and think about and do the things well that a teacher needs to do, because you want to be the very best teacher for yourself that you can possibly be. So when you have a drawing class, when you have a drawing session, make sure you're ready for it. Be prepared. Have the work that's going to be done ready beforehand so that in the actual session time, you can start to draw straight away. Choose material that's at the right level so that the student has a chance of doing it well and being encouraged by the result. Plan for work that both reinforces what's being done but pushes slowly into new directions. And make sure that you mark the work after every session. Decide whether it's adequate to move on or not, and give comments that will give direction for the student, for you, as to how you might focus in the next drawing you do to push further in what you're able to produce. Can I just add on this point, one problem with doing work that's really too hard is that it has one of two bad consequences. The first is it simply discourages us and we actually think, I'm hopeless, I can't do this, when none of that's true. It's just that we let our enthusiasm carry us away. We can't start at the end. We need to be realistic. But secondly, and just as damaging, is that if we do things continuously that really aren't very good and we don't recognize and acknowledge this and make adjustments because of it, we can actually get very used to doing things that aren't very good, and we can lose our discernment to see the problems with what we've done. So again, as the teacher, we need to mark our work to critique what we've done in an encouraging but realistic way. This next one's very important in this YouTube age, and that's work hard at staying relevant with the material that you give time to. There are lots of interesting and entertaining and well-produced how to do various types of art videos that we can find very helpful. But in the end, if they're not taking us in the direction we want to go with our own creativity fairly directly and fairly obviously, then they're not something we should be watching in our drawing time. I can watch anything I like for entertainment or for interest at any time. But if I'm wanting to learn to draw, I should find material that lines up with what I'm wanting to do, with how I'm wanting to do it. It may not be the most entertaining, but it may actually be the most productive for what I want to do. And it will be the work I produce from watching this material that will actually tell me if this is a good channel to stay with. Now, this won't be relevant for everybody, but don't get distracted from simply becoming very good at your drawing. Don't start fantasizing about being an artist and giving up your full-time job, or of wonderful exhibitions, sipping Chardonnay and nibbling hors d'oeuvres. Don't be thinking of how you'll spend the money that you'll make from your e-shop or whatever they're called. These things certainly can happen, and why not? But they don't happen at the start, and they can be a distraction from us actually learning what we're doing. If we start to conform what we do and how we do it to what we think will sell, well, firstly, we may not have any real idea of what that is. But secondly, that's going to clash at some point, probably at many points, with simply developing our ability to draw well. So doing those things are great goals to have. They're great motivation when we feel like giving up or it's hard work. But we shouldn't race to let them influence what we do and how we do it until it's the right time, until we've actually learnt enough to productively then go in that direction. This next one is simply a warning. There are lots and lots of people out there out to make money from people who are learning art in some way or producing art in some way. Sometimes they're just trying to get you to buy courses that promise all sorts of things, and I've had lots of comments from lots of people making clear that you can waste a lot of money for no gain in what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it, and there are just out and out scamsters out there. And particularly if you're on social media, lots of people are saying how wonderful your art is, and at the end of the day, they're all trying to rip you off in some way. Don't let the flattery in any way rob you of discernment. And sometimes if we're older and perhaps not so connected with technology, this can be a means of exploiting our ignorance to cause us to trust that there is some way I can make money that they're talking about, even if I don't understand it, and if I just put this money up front, whatever. No, there are no free rides. You're not going to make the money. They will at your expense. And if in doubt, find a young person to ask. I know my kids are very good at going, scam, scam, it's a scam, Dad. Now, this next point, how we can do this will differ for each of us, but try and connect with other people who are drawing, and there may be local possibilities, there may be community groups, there may be some seniors centres around if you're a bit older than 50. There may be some local art centres where you can connect in a way that's achievable and affordable with other people doing something similar. But it is good to be able to get the perspective that we get when we create with other people around us creating as well. It can help us be a lot less self-conscious, it can help us get ideas, and at times it can help encourage us when we're feeling our own enthusiasm flagging. And I would suggest social media as one of the ways. Have an account on whatever app you want to use where you can post your art, not so much to post your own art, but to see the art that other people are posting, because you will see the art of every spectrum of ability from worse than you to Leonardo da Vinci standard. And this is tremendously helpful, particularly when we're having to learn how to be a teacher as well as learn how to draw. Tremendously helpful in getting ideas, on seeing techniques that are being used, all sorts of things we can rip off and use in our own work. I don't mean rip off, but we can use. When we see someone who's done a drawing that is exactly the sort of way we're trying to draw our subject, our similar subject, then we could really analyse how have they done it? How have they created that effect? What marks have they made? How have they combined them? And I can use all of this in my own drawing. But let me suggest, don't ever waste time copying the drawings of somebody else. Use the drawings other people do. Be inspired and analyse and learn from them. But if we just copy, we don't develop the creative, if you like, translation process of looking at a photo or something in front of us and working out how to translate that into marks on my paper. Because that's the true challenge. It's not how to draw a straight line, but it's what marks on the paper will create the effect that I'm seeing in life in some way. And when I copy the marks someone else has worked out how to put, where to put, how to combine, I get no practice at that. And that's the key thing. That's the hard thing in drawing. Not putting the marks on the paper, but working out which marks to put where and how. All I learn is how to copy, which is a skill, but it's not the skill of drawing my own original work. So it's not going to take me to the place I want to go. It will just be a side path that ultimately may make me confused and a bit discouraged. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Congratulations on getting to this point. And if you are in middle age or older, let me encourage you. This is a tremendous journey you're embarking on. I hope this has given you some thoughts, some ideas. And if I can just recommend a playlist of mine, which has a couple of hundred videos on it, I think, but it's tips for the self-taught artist. And it's a lot of the things that you won't see in how to draw videos, but are all the mindset, process, habits to be in, tips that I've learned are a tremendously useful way of fast-tracking our drawing improvement. But look, in the end, However you progress your drawing journey, starting later in life, fantastic that you've started. Have fun, don't take yourself too seriously, be realistic and enjoy the journey. I'll see you next video. Bye.